United States is a beacon, a magnet for dreams. People want to come here because they dream of a better life, a job to feed their kids, and the Holy Grail, an education. Sometimes their very dreams make them vulnerable. Despite the promise of this land, sometimes dreams are used to trap people. This is their story. This is a surveillance operation in the strawberry fields of northern San Diego County.
I count about anywhere from 10 to 15 girls.
The officers think these young girls have been trafficked into the United States from Mexico.
The traffickers are very manipulative. They'll lie to them, promise them good jobs, but once they get over here, they find themselves being forced into a prostitution.
For the girls, the United States is a dream gone wrong. In minutes, they've changed from typical schoolgirl clothes into miniskirts and high heels. A lookout appears to give the thumbs up. Migrant workers leave a nearby parking lot, headed toward the girls. Some sort of exchange is made. One of the girls follows a man into the bushes. They have sex in plain view.
They're brought to the United States and they're basically, kept captive. It's modern day slavery what's going on.
Slavery is about one person controlling another person using violence, or maybe the threat of violence, paying the person absolutely nothing, and then using that situation to exploit them economically, to make money off them.
Kevin Bales is one of the leading experts in the world on modern-day slavery and co-authored a study on slavery in the United States. He reports there are 27 million slaves in the world today. At least 10,000 of them live in the United States.
We've got way too much slavery, even if we've got a handful, and we've got thousands. They've been brought in from other countries, from all over the world, because they're poor, they're often desperate for work, they're vulnerable, and they're doing all kinds of different things. They're being used in prostitution, in agricultural work, in domestic service, working in people's houses.
A coalition of 40 agencies on both sides of the U.S.-Mexican border in Southern California work together to free slaves, bust traffickers, and to prevent trafficking from happening in the first place.
To the traffickers, the children, they're expendable, reusable, and resellable. And that makes them a priceless commodity.
But there will be no bust or rescues on this day. It's too risky.
It's just about losing the victims. They say we do go Russian right now. They have a lookout. They're going to see us way before we even get close enough. What if we lose all the young girls? We may never find them again.
If you've always lived in freedom, it seems reasonable that slaves could just kind of walk out in a free country like America and find themselves a policeman and say, "Help me." But they don't speak English. But they're terrified of the police because they've been told over and over that the police are going to arrest them and attack them and maybe torture them. They don't know where they are. They're very often locked in. They're in shock. Now put yourself in that shoe and you'll find, well, this is kind of a hard thing to just walk away.
100 miles north in a suburb of Los Angeles, Maria Suarez knows what the girls in the strawberry fields are going through.
When I was a little girl, I saw my parents working hard, my dad, my mother, and my dream was to one day become somebody, have money and give them the best of their life, treat them like king and queen.
Maria grew up on a farm in Mexico. In 1976, she came to the U.S. legally to live with her sister. Maria didn't speak English. Her 16th birthday was just a few weeks away. A woman Maria met on the street offered to find her work.
She told me not to tell my family that she was coming very soon. And to me it sounded good because I said I'm going to surprise them with a job. But it was not a job. It was just a trick, a trap that I fell into.
The woman took the naive young girl to this house.
So when we got there, I met this man. He was an old man. Probably he was in his 65 or 70, I don't know. The house was like creepy. I didn't want to stay there. They keep telling me, you stay here, you meet my wife, because he had a wife. And then I take you to your house tomorrow. I didn't want it, but between them two, they convinced me.
Much later, police would report that the man was an old lecher who claimed to be a brujo or witch, and that he had a history of buying young girls from Mexico and trading them in when they turned 20.
At the third day, it's when he told me that he had bought me, that I was his slave, that he paid $200 for me, that I was there to do whatever he wants to do to me.
Maria says he told her he could read her mind and that he would kill her family if she tried to leave the house.
I was afraid of him. I was terrorized by him. He beat me, raped me. Every day he abused me mentally, physically, emotional, spiritual, because I was not in touch with my family. I was not in touch with people because I was afraid of him.
Years went by. Dreams disappeared. Only fear remained.
The only thing I felt was fear. Fear all the time. So I figure God has forgotten me. I used to ask God, why did you forget about me? I'm your child.
Her family called the police several times. Officers investigated. They didn't do anything about a minor living with an older man.
I was so afraid that he was going to kill my family that I told the police that I was fine. I was okay.
It's a coercive, physical, and mental control that becomes like a chain around your brain and you can't walk away.
5 years passed.
At the end, I was just living. Okay, one more day. As long as I can last, either he's gonna kill me or I'm gonna die.
It's hard to believe it could get worse, but it did. The man enslaving Maria was killed by a neighbor.
He killed him, and I hear the noise. I came out. The victim was on the floor, on the ground. He told me to grab the stick and to put it under the house. I did that. He gave it to me on my hand, and I did it.
Maria and her neighbors were arrested for the murder.
To make a long story short, the criminals that actually committed the crime on the property blamed Maria for everything. Maria was not in a position to adequately defend herself. Battered women's syndrome and the types of injuries that Maria had endured while a slave on the man's property were not well understood.
Decades later, Charles Song would take up Maria's case, but Maria's attorney at the time was fighting drug charges of his own.
In addition to that, this was his first criminal defense trial, much less felony defense trial. So she also had extremely inadequate representation.
He promised my family that I was going to be free by Christmas. I never got free. I was sentenced with 25 to life.
For a long time, Maria thought the man, whose name she will not say and doesn't like to hear, would somehow come after her, even though he was dead.
It's important to understand that, if you or I were to suffer an attack, say, to be mugged on the street, we might get bashed over the head, but that traumatic event, like a car wreck, it's over in 20 seconds. Their trauma, their horror lasts day in and day out, week in and week out for years. When they come out of those kinds of situations, they have to work hard at trying to rebuild their own mental health.
Slowly, behind bars, Maria freed her mind.
I choose to use my time productively. I choose to be a better person.
She started to be a mentor for younger prisoners. She was your model prison. She took college classes while she was in prison, and she ran counseling groups and therapy groups.
Maria got her GED and worked in clinics helping other inmates.
I had a family who, every time that I did something good, that I shared my good experiences, they were very happy. That was my payback.
Finally, in 2001, the Board of Prison Terms investigated her case.
They were wanting for me to say, yes, I did this, I did that, but I was not going to say anything like that.
The report concluded that Maria suffered an extreme level of torture and that it's a tragedy that she's still imprisoned after all these years. Maria's co-defendant said she hadn't even been involved with the murder.
And now that she served the time that she was convicted for the crime that she did not commit, then she gets released and you think, well, maybe now she can get on with her life and live with her family.
It wasn't to be. In 2003, after 5 years in slavery and 22.5 years in prison, Maria was paroled, but she was not free.
Because of this wrongful conviction, immigration is required by law to remove her from the United States, to deport her from the United States. So she was taken directly from the Chino Institution for Women to the San Pedro Detention Center.
Charles is the legal director of CAST, an organization dedicated to abolishing slavery and trafficking. He hoped recently passed anti-trafficking laws could be used to keep Maria in the country.
One of the things that really just sticks in my mind that she said when I first interviewed her that day is that all she wants is a little bit of justice.
I told him that I felt I just want somebody to listen, to believe in me, and to know that I've been telling the truth, and just a little bit of justice. That's what I told him.
And of course that kind of became one of my mantras during her case, is that she's just asking for a little bit of justice, and that's the least that I could help her try to attain.
And I really believe in him. I knew that he was going to do something.
Maria had already been ordered deported when Charles won a T visa for her.
It's essentially a visa for victims of slavery and trafficking in the United States that cooperate with law enforcement, that are here on account of the trafficking, and that would face extreme hardship involving severe and unusual harm if they were returned to their home countries. It permits her to travel with permission from the government. It also permits her to work in the United States legally.
Maria spent 5 months and 7 days here. In 2004, after almost 28 years, she was finally free.
I just started crying, screaming, yelling, laughing and jumping, and I was wanting to hug everybody. I see my family, I see friends, I see all these people, and I just was wanting to hug everybody.
Maria has been living with her family in Los Angeles for a year, and she's been running whenever and wherever she wants. She's even run a marathon to raise money and support the work of CAST.
Feels good.
CAST not only provides legal help, it provides social services, runs a shelter for freed slaves, and works around the country to raise awareness about slavery and trafficking.
It's like a part of my family, and they are a family.
Maria works with CAST to send a message of hope to the victims of slavery.
They loved, they're human beings, and they need to find a way to send the message that what they're going through.
She's taking college classes and dreams of helping people as a social worker.
I would love to work for teenagers and people who needs me.
She's always been about giving back to a community that really hasn't done a lot for her.
Charles and Cass continue to work for Maria. Her conviction could still get Maria kicked out of the country, so they hope for a pardon from the governor or the president.
At the very least she deserves, after having 22 years of her life stolen from her for something that she did not do. She's not asking for her life back. She doesn't want to sue the state or anybody for damages and for money, things like that. She just wants to clear her name.
For now, Maria has found just a little bit of justice, if only temporarily.
I'm touching it, feeling it, I'm living it. I think finally something is happening to my way, and I'm 45, but I believe I'm 16.
Every year, between 15 and 18,000 people are trafficked into the United States.
Trafficking is all about what happens at the end of the trip. You're smuggled, you sneak in yourself, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the trip, you're caught up in a situation of slavery, and that's what trafficking's about. You end up as a slave.
The man we'll call Miguel was one of the people who ended up a slave picking oranges in Florida.
And when I came here, I earned nothing. It was a false dream. In the end, I was here working, and I was a slave.
His 6-year-old son had cancer. Miguel couldn't afford the medicine, so he headed for the border. He could make more money in one day working for minimum wage in Florida than he could working all week in Mexico. He borrowed $300 and left his family in hopes of saving them.
And I figured that when I came here to the U.S., I would work and pay off the debt.
This is a great scam if you're a criminal, because very often the farm worker pays you to enslave them. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but what happens is they say, look, you're going to have to put up some money so that we can get you transported to this job. So they take their life savings, which isn't very much, and hand it over to the trafficker, who, puts that in their pocket, takes them to a place where they then say, well, in fact, your life savings didn't count for hardly anything. We're going to need a lot more money from you to pay for this. So you're going to have to work for free as long as we tell you, so that you'll pay off the debts that you now owe us.
We hadn't eaten for 3 days, so we were hungry, and we just came here like that.
Miguel met his new boss in South Florida.
That's when he said, if any of you assholes try to leave without paying back your ride, that's when I'm really going to f*** you up.
That works two ways. It both makes the worker unsure about the fact that they're actually being enslaved. It makes them think for a little while, well, maybe I do need to work and pay back this debt. And it kind of works on their mind as a reason to go ahead and hand over their labor for nothing. And it works for the slaveholder, because as long as they can keep the enslaved person hopeful, they get a lot more work out of them.
I was working from morning to night, but because he took us to fields where there were trees but there weren't many oranges, there wasn't much to pick. So we were in the field from early morning to really late at night.
Miguel slept here. 6 men were crammed into each room, hidden in plain sight between a resort and a Florida highway. On payday, his bosses, the Ramos family, subtracted inflated charges for rent and transportation, leaving just enough to buy food.
It's just a bogus situation which is used to convince the workers that in fact they're working for money when they're not. So the slaveholders are clever enough to keep this bit of hope going by handing them money and then taking it right back again. Sooner or later, the debt becomes clear. It's bogus. This is a false thing. It's slavery. And then that's really when the guns come out.
There were something like 40 guys who were working for the Ramoses, and they were watching us.
One day, Miguel overheard the boss talk about a worker who ran away.
Oh, we're going to get that motherfucker. We're going to get him. We're going to throw him in the pond with the alligators and kill him.
Local farm worker activists knew all about the Ramos family.
Yeah, because I've seen what they've done. I was there at the van incident. I went down there, and we saw the guy that they beat up. He was bleeding from his lip, and he had a huge gash also from his forehead all the way down to his lip.
Migrant farm workers traveled from job to job across the South on an informal network of vans. In the spring of 2000, some men attacked these vans and started beating the drivers with pistols.
There were three Ramoses together beating the van owner on the ground, and when he fell to the ground, they started kicking him.
Roberto was one of the drivers that night. He can still remember what the ringleader said.
He said, "You're the one who's taking our people," and he hit the van driver. He said, "Nobody move. Nobody say anything. And if you move, and if you try to talk to the police, I'll kill you."
Roberto got away and called the coalition of Immokalee workers for help. Lucas Benitez and other organizers recorded this video. Two Ramos brothers and a cousin, the same contractors Miguel was working for, were later sent to jail for the beating. It would not be the last time the coalition heard of the Ramos family. The life of a migrant farm worker is tough, even when slavery is nowhere in sight. During the picking season in Immokalee, workers are up before dawn trying to get a job. Labor contractors or middlemen hire pickers by the day and bus them to and from the fields.
The conditions that we face every day are ground zero for slavery to flourish.
Organizers say the lack of basic protections for migrant farm workers opens the door to even worse abuses, like slavery.
It is important to work together to change these conditions.
The coalition teaches workers about their rights so that they can change their own lives. Coalition members boycotted fast food companies for years until they won higher wages.
The coalition goes with every farm worker that believes that justice is a possibility.
A coalition-run radio station keeps workers informed in at least 6 different languages.
A group like the Coalition for Immokalee Workers are absolutely crucial in the situation because in many ways they're the group that actually understands what's really going on.
The coalition also helps free slaves and convict slaveholders.
So for years we had heard rumors about this Ramos family that was in Lake Placid. We had heard that they were bad, that they were a bad family and they were doing bad things to the workers up there. So we started to go up there and we started trying to find out what was happening up there. We tried to find out information, tried to talk to the workers, to try to understand and to learn more.
And none of us wanted to say it because we thought they might be spies for the same boss.
And in the moment we entered the camp, we felt the fear from those workers that they wouldn't talk about their experiences and that there was something happening there.
But I did say one thing: you can give me your card.
2 weeks later, Miguel and his friends decided to make that call for help.
And the one that was on the phone, he asked me, "You're not one of them, right?"
The plan was to split up and walk casually toward the highway. Lucas would be on the side of the road as though his car was broken. The slaves began to run when they saw Lucas's car.
And that's when I drove off. I was actually driving down the opposite way of the road against traffic.
The coalition rescued us. If it wasn't for that, who knows what would have happened? Maybe we would have been killed, or maybe just left there, stranded, away from our families. Because we were stuck there, we had to pay for the ride, we had to pay for the rent, we had to pay for all those things, and we weren't making anything.
The 3 Ramoses were sentenced to a total of 32 years in prison. The big companies they contracted for were never investigated. A former Labor Department attorney says an old law called hot goods could be used to get contractors like the Ramoses and the big growers they work for.
Hot goods is a great remedy, mainly because it's very fast. You can collect back wages in as little as a week. The other reason it's a good thing is it freezes the goods in place. They can't be moved until the back wages are paid.
That means the produce could just rot, and big growers, processors, distributors, grocery stores, everyone along the product chain loses money when pickers are abused in the fields. James Leonard has even written a handbook to help farm organizers in the Labor Department use the Hot Goods Act. He's used it successfully a few times, and says it would only take a few cases to catch the attention of the industry.
I think using publicity would have a big effect.
Miguel is working in a warehouse now. He's here legally and sending money to his family. His son is healthy.
I think the world should know that these things happen, and it's really horrible.
I called to Laura.
Lucas continues to organize fellow workers and fight slavery in Immokalee, Florida.
Slavery just shouldn't exist anywhere in the world. And to be a citizen of the world, I should struggle to do something about that, to end those abuses.
I was surprised in our study of slavery in the United States by how important the average citizen was in helping slaves to freedom. You know, we called them Good Samaritans.
Hey, what's up, dog?
As usual, in 1999, Louis Itongwe was recording his extended family's holiday celebration.
You're a very good cook.
But this time, something's different. A young girl keeps trying to duck Louis's camera, as though she's afraid of it.
Now I see. See, now she's running away.
Louis started asking questions about his cousin's house guest. What he found out shocked him and changed his life.
He really took a lot of risk and a lot of courage, and we really do appreciate what he did to us.
I was horrified because I thought that's not in this day and age that someone would treat someone's, someone's child not like this.
Rose was just 14 when she was tricked into leaving her family in Africa. Another Cameroonian family offered her an American education and a babysitting job.
When I got here, it actually didn't happen the way I was told.
She worked punishing hours, she was beaten, she was never paid, and she never went to school.
She began to tell me these things on the phone. I was so stunned. I mean, it was such an outrageous story.
I try to make sure that everything is right so I won't get yelled or get beaten up.
Beaten and alone, Rose had nowhere to turn.
I would sit all by myself and just think about things I could do with my sisters, how we used to play together, and I would just cry because I miss them. And I would just cry, hoping that one day I will get to see them again.
I used to live right in there, and I ran away from here.
One cold day, 2.5 years after she arrived, Rose just couldn't take it anymore.
It's like my blood pressure was rising, my head was like pumping inside. So I had no shoes on, no jacket, I didn't think of anything.
Rose opened the door and began to run. She stopped running in this parking lot. She begged change to call someone who had seemed sympathetic to her troubles in the past. Then she sat down in the dark to wait for him.
So I told myself, I really give up. I don't care whatever happened with my life. Right now, I think I've tried my best running away, and now I won't do it again. So I just went and sat down somewhere really dark and just have my hands put inside the t-shirt because I was really cold.
Rose ended up with Louis's cousin and then on Louis's videotape. Rose told Louis there were 2 more Cameroonian slaves in the area. They were all from Louis's tribe.
He helped them to safety, rescued them, took them all into his house, cared for them, helped them along as they began to figure out, how do we deal with this as a situation? How do we deal with this as a legal case? How do we deal with this as an immigration case? This all occurred before we had the best federal law that will help us deal with that kind of situation today. He was operating in the dark, but boy, did he do the right thing. He saved people from slavery and then cared for them out of his own pocket. What a guy.
Overall, looking at it now, I know that if I didn't do it, nobody else was going to do it.
Camera in hand, Lewis began to document what had happened to the young women.
She was a very bad lady.
Christy worked day and night for 5 years. She was paid $800.
I was like in jail. I mean, I didn't have no life.
And what lesson have you learned from this episode?
I have learned that if I have my own child, tomorrow I cannot let my child stay with another person else. Even we are dying of hungry or thirsty, we should stay in our own house.
Lewis took these tapes to Cameroon to show the parents and gather evidence against the traffickers. The parents had not heard from their daughters since they left.
So we wish you that you continue with your education. We pray that the authorities should really assist. For time has passed where a child has to be treated as a slave. We will really have a nightmare after your TV view.
My child was sent there to help and do everything that she should be treated well, and not like a slave.
With evidence from the parents in hand, Lewis turned to CASA of Maryland for help.
CASA is, as a whole, an immigrant rights organization, and they have a number of different programs that all tie into the idea of building a community of immigrants who fight for their own rights.
CASA helped the women Lewis rescued. The traffickers were sued in civil court and prosecuted in criminal court.
Rose bravely went through that process, and in fact, the family who kept her were convicted and sentenced to 9 years in prison and around $100,000 in restitution that they need to pay Rose.
So I don't really look at it like, oh my God, they're in jail. I'm okay now. No, I'm still not okay.
Rose will probably never see the money, and she won't see her parents. They passed away in 2002. Christie's traffickers got 5 years probation and were ordered to pay $180,000 in back wages. So far, she's received about $2,000. The two women share an apartment in Maryland and a dream to be nurses. They both work as nursing assistants. They don't have enough money to go to school, but they have started to dream again.
That's nice. Okay. I want to get my education finished, and hopefully one day, by God's help, I will get to meet and see my sisters again. I'm building a house for my parents, and I sponsor my siblings. I, like pay their tuitions in school. Yeah, I put them on, or in school.
I hope that they will experience the America that they dreamed about when they came here. They came here for strong, powerful reasons. They didn't get what they bargained for, but in each case, I see them getting back on the path and making their way toward the future they thought they had when they first left their homes.
We all have a moral obligation.
The Good Samaritan is still spreading the word to just about anyone who'll listen. Elizabeth Keyes thinks that may be the best way for the average citizen to stop trafficking.
One of the greatest weapons in the fight against trafficking is inquisitive neighbors. We don't like to be nosy. We don't want to ask that question. But the young girl, the young boy in that house is hoping against hope somebody's going to ask that question so that they can get help.
We can bring this to an end. This could be the generation that says enough. We've had 5,000 years of slavery. We're going to bring it to an end. And that's what I hope for, because I think we can do it. I think we're going to do it.
It's funny how much it takes to kill a dream. Dreams can be crushed, denied, suffocated, even enslaved. But there's power in dreams. A single ray of light, a hint of hope, and dreams somehow flicker back to life. Since this documentary was completed, Maria Suarez testified before the state legislature and helped pass the California Victims of Trafficking Act, the kind of law that could have helped Maria all those years ago. She also faced down old demons and visited the house where she was once tortured and enslaved. It's now a Sunday school class called Centro Esperanza, or the Center of Hope. Maria says at least something good came of something so bad.